Okay, so anyone who knows me knows that I am a pretty big Star Wars fan. I mean, I got collectibles, I got the t-shirts, I got the pop figures, I got all the movies except for the recent one, which is what we're going to be talking about today in this little news shtick I call Personal Opinion. Now, I like all the Star Wars movies, even the ones people technically consider to be the bad ones, because I try to see the positive side in all things, or I just ignore the bad things, like big floppy frog people, for instance. It's not a necessary part of the story, doesn't really impact it in all that many ways, so it doesn't really bother me that it's there. It's just one of those things I don't care about. And so whether it's watching the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy, I'm a pretty big fan of Star Wars. And when it comes to Star Wars, one of the big hot topics that comes up, of course, is the new trilogy, which there's a lot of issues people seem to have with it. There's a lot good to it, there's a lot bad to it. And there's a lot of bad things, or excuse me, a lot of the bad parts of it is that, it's tailored to the younger audience. It's not Star Wars anymore. Disney's ruined it, which are both wrong and true ideas and terms. When we take into consideration what is Star Wars, like it's one of those things that's up to definition or interpretation. What Star Wars to me might be different to somebody else entirely. And it's really just another one of those things that's based on one's own perception, like so many things in life are. When someone says Star Wars, the first thing that pops into your head are X-Wings, TIE Fighters, Death Star, Vader. Love it. We're all about it. But there's a vibe to it. There's a feeling that we get while watching Star Wars. There's a sort of sensation to it. Just like how whenever you think Disney films, there's a certain vibe you get. When you think Indiana Jones, there's a certain energy that comes from it that's familiar to that series. And whether it be Game of Thrones, whether it be Naruto, Teen Titans, whether it be anything from Friends to The Office, each different series and realm or show has an energy to it, has a pattern, has a feel. And with Star Wars, there's a very definite feel to the original trilogy. And when we transfer over to the prequels, we kind of get that vibe from it that the original trilogy brought. There's a lot of differences to it. There's a different vibe and there's a different energy from it. It's a lot more energetic. It's a lot more progressive the way the story moves. How, we just leap from one thing to the other. Whereas with the original trilogy, things were a bit slower. The story is more about the story and the development rather than, lasers going off at you all the time. Even though we have to admit, well, lightsaber duels in the prequels are probably the best sword fighting we've seen ever. Now, between these two, the prequel and the original trilogy, they're pretty similar, like I was saying. There's little key differences, but all in all, we get the same idea. Transfer to the new trilogy, and it's a completely different paradigm. There's almost nothing similar, except the storyline. We get a hero in the desert who is taken away from their home, the only home they've ever known, by these people in peril who are being chased by some, galactic military. They find plans to a thing that allows them to blow up this big death weapon. They become heroes, and the next movie they're on the run from these bad guys who want vengeance for blowing up their big death thing. We've seen it before. It's the original in, The Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and somewhat in the new film, which I'll get to here in a minute, The Rise of Skywalker. It's just a retelling of the original trilogy, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. which is all fine and dandy, because I guess they were going for the retelling of Star Wars, sort of that same vibe for the new generation. The problem with that is, if you want the old generation to feel that old vibe, let the new generation watch the old movies. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you want that experience, just watch the old frickin' movies. They're still here. You can go to any store and buy them. So why, when you have this big budget, when you have this opportunity to make movies and expand on a universe people have been waiting for 20 plus years, why remake what you already have? Why retell the same story? To me, that is a big waste of potential, a waste of how to tell a story. You know, you had this opportunity to expand the universe, to expand the storyline in a way that people wanted, that people have been waiting for. You had all this material in the old comics and the books, and they just threw it out the window. And had this opportunity to make something new for the new generation, and ruined it by telling the old one over again. So now it's pretty much like buying a book, and then buying that same book, but a new translation. It's like you have a King James Bible versus a New International Version. That's pretty much what you're looking at. It's the same story, just a few words changed. That's almost what it's like to me. But all in all, you know, despite this, they are good movies. Because when I watched The Force Awakens, it was like watching A New Hope for the first time for me. There were just a few differences, but it had that sort of Star Wars-y feel to it, but it was different. And a good different to me. Which I still felt that it was, they could have done something different, and they could have done something a bit more exciting with it. Certainly with the characters. But all in all, it wasn't bad. Then we move on to The Last Jedi, and that was probably the biggest flop in Star Wars history. Like, that movie made The Phantom Menace look good. Mostly, it was sloppily done. It was very slow. Like, that's a movie that just kind of drags on. Again, a waste of potential for these characters and their development and the story of Star Wars. It was just a pity fest throughout the whole thing, I felt. It was just one disappointment after another. And then at the end of the movie, when you think you're going to see something exciting, a resolve to it, it's lackluster, is the word I can think of for it. Which, everybody thinks. Everybody's disappointed. And whether you're going at it really slowly like I am, I was disappointed with it. It didn't meet my expectations. It was very slow, very boring. That's pretty much what The Last Jedi is. Like, it drags on for a bit. You hear some pity story about Luke Skywalker, which is totally uncharacteristic of him. The whole scenario seems very uncharacteristic for him, and for Mark Hamill in general, for that character he is playing, because he's a great actor, and usually you get his characters pretty well, you understand them, and they're very much like him. But this change in Luke, it just doesn't match to me. Which, again, my personal opinion, hence the title of this segment. Which, again, you have people who liked it, you have people who bash on it. That's just the way it is for everything. You got your haters, and you got your people who give it the thumbs up. I'm the one in the middle.
I am the one in the middle. I take no side.
Now, with The Rise of Skywalker, which is a cheesy-ass name to me, there was sort of some redemption from the last movie, and, again, some disappointment. Now, from, of course, reviewers and people who are, in Hollywood and who are, giving, this movie praise, they're paid to, of course. They're going to promote this movie so that you actually go and watch it. But then you have the comments, on your Facebooks and your Twitters of people just tearing into it, just bashing the absolute hell out of it. And I just saw this movie this week, alright? I've been hearing about it. I've heard good, I've heard bad. And, it gives you an idea in your head because you have your own preconceptions of how something's going to work out, if it's going to be good or bad. And then you have these positive reviews and you have these negative reviews, and they conflict with your ideas. So you never really know what to go into, and then you actually go and watch it, and you're not sure how you're supposed to react, or at least that is for me. So let's start this way. I liked Rise of Skywalker. I can honestly say I enjoyed watching it. I didn't mind it. Now, with that being said, though I liked Rise of Skywalker, it is not a good movie. It's not a bad movie, but it's not great. It's not anything comparable to what the original trilogy was. It's not a Empire Strikes Back. It's not a conclusion like the Return of the Jedi or even Revenge of the Sith was, which is also one of my favorite Star Wars movies. So let me explain. I liked how the movie went. I liked how it tied in, however loosely and kind of screwed up to the rest of the movies that came before it in this new trilogy. That's not to say it doesn't have a lot of issues, but I think it played out well. I think the interactions between the characters are very realistic. Whereas with the past movies, you have people very, regal, very strict, very stern Jedi talking in their councils. Not something people can relate to very well. But of course, then again, it also makes sense. Them being an ancient order, very strict in their methods, very traditional. They're going to be like that. You go to any religious meeting or any political meeting, everybody's very strict, everybody's very pompous, everybody's very, we must do this with haste and dignity and discipline and, yada, yada, yada. They're going to be like that, whereas everybody not as relaxed as, regular people like you and me are. And, with this generation, it's very important that they be related to, because everybody has to have something in common with these characters. Everybody has to feel like that's them. And so when you make these characters who are a bit more loose, a little more modern, let's say, people bond with that more. And I liked that. And that's saying something coming from a guy who does not like his generation at all. In just the times I'm in, but I guess for any generation that's the same. We all have our issues. Anyway, I did like how it played out. I liked how the characters interacted, but there was a lot of things that were rushed. There were new characters who had these relationships with the characters that were established, like Poe, who have this relationship going on with them, but it's not very significant because we don't know them. There's no development in their character. They're just kind of thrown in there, which is nice because it gives background to them and it kind of gives depth to the established character. But, there's nothing to them. I'd like to see more of these characters, but at the same time, it does nothing for the story than being there. Especially in regards to characters like Poe and Finn, who are side characters at best, because really we're there to see Rey's story. I also don't like how the movie just cuts to scenes so quickly and so abruptly. Like, you'll be watching one person doing one thing, and then all of a sudden you're somewhere else on a different planet watching somebody else do this. In the prequel trilogy, the movies at least had the courtesy of doing side swipes or things like of that nature to indicate, like, okay, the scene is changing. We're going in a different direction. We followed these guys for a little bit, now we're going to follow these guys over here in their story, and it's all going to make sense. Rise of Skywalker, there was none of that. They were fitting a lot of information into one, little chapter very quickly, and I was confused watching it through most part of the film, which, when I go back and see it a second time, I'll obviously catch a bit more detail, and, at the end of the movie, I understood what was happening, I knew what went on, and I got it. But you had to pay close attention because a lot of it does change very quickly. It seemed more like an Indiana Jones movie than Star Wars to me. It seemed like an episode of something, like an anime, or like something like that. We got all this information, we got these characters doing this one thing, but compared to the last episode, there's a lot of detail. It's like, alright, I saw the other week's episode. I must have missed last week's episode because I'm on this week's and I have no idea what's going on. There's all this detail from the other week's episode, but compared to this week's, I don't understand. There's a lot of other things I don't get. So did I miss something in between here? Was there something that happened I didn't get? That's what it felt like. But you're given all the information. It's just rushed, so it seems like you're missing stuff. So I didn't much appreciate that. So, you know, there was some discomfort. There was humor in there that didn't need to be there, that was obviously thrown in, because everything these days is a comedy. And I explained this in my rant about movies, why, you know, the aspects I don't like about them. And people try throwing humor in where it doesn't belong. And everybody in this generation thinks they're funny. Everybody with their memes and their jokes, they try to make humor that they can base on. And the humor in Rise of Skywalker, it's not bad. Understand that. I'm not saying it's horrible. It's cute humor. It's smart alecky, you know, humor, but it's more fitting of something that's like a cartoon, like a kid's cartoon, than this big cinematic story with serious plot points and development that people have come to know. It's too Disney, if you catch my drift, which is not Star Wars. Disney and Star Wars are two totally different realms and concepts. And, you know, I knew that from the very beginning. The merge with Disney and LucasArts was a bad idea, which now everybody knows. And so, you know, with upcoming Star Wars projects, I feel that they're going to take what they learned from this trilogy, these movies, and improve on that, which I really hope they do. Because, again, I did enjoy these movies. I did enjoy Rise of Skywalker. I did kind of enjoy, to a much lesser extent, The Last Jedi, and I'll watch The Force Awakens any day. It's not a bad movie to me. So, at the end of the day, if you want to go see Rise of Skywalker, I'm not recommending it. I'm not recommending you go see it. I'm not discouraging you to go see it. If you want to go see it, go see it. Because I think it's an okay movie. It's not a great movie, but it's not the most god-awful piece of garbage you've ever seen. Like a Seth Rogen movie or something. Like, it's good. You know, you can tolerate it. You'll get it. It's got decent humor. It's enjoyable. It's not like, oh my goodness, it's the greatest story ever. That was such a bravo. It's a great ending to this trilogy. It makes my heart explode out of my chest. It's so flippin' everywhere. No, it's not like that. It's okay. It's, alright, you know, we saw these characters do all this stuff they went through, stuff we've technically already seen, yada yada. It's over. Big hero celebration. Everyone's happy. They get their happy ending. Dramatic pause at the end of the movie. You've discovered who you are, Rey. You know your purpose in the universe. You've carried out your legacy in this big dramatic way that didn't really make sense. Bravo. You know, good job. Good job. It's not a big deal. Because, you know, everything is so crushed together and so lazily done. It's not as intense as the original movies. And I think that's one of the big issues people have with Rise of Skywalker. It's not as powerful. There's all these indications that you're supposed to be emotionally involved. There's all this information given to you to make you feel something for these characters and their development, but it's just not there because it's so rushed. And that's what I think is wrong with the movie, and that's why I think a lot of people are disappointed with it. And again, if you've seen Rise of Skywalker, if you enjoyed it, if it was, you know, the thing you've dreamed of for the past 40 plus years, then good for you. I'm glad this satisfied you and you can go to bed, you know, and sleep happily tonight thinking, wow, that sure was neat. If you're one of the people who absolutely hate and rip into this, like it's, oh my god, it's the worst fucking thing I've ever seen in my life, they should burn in hell for making this garbage, I don't blame you. You know, I've been a fan of Star Wars since I was a little kid. I grew up with these movies. I love the original trilogy. I like the prequels. I've watched every cartoon. I've read most of the comics. I have a lot of the books. I love Star Wars. I'm the biggest nerd for it in the world. If you love Rise of Skywalker, kudos to you. If you hate Rise of Skywalker, I don't blame you. I liked it. I'm not going to recommend it or discourage you from going to see it. You know, it has its pros and cons. It's a cute movie with a lot of flaws. But all in all, not bad. It was built up to be this great, spectacular thing, and it just isn't. You know, it doesn't have that effect on people. It doesn't have that effect on me anyway. And which is disappointing, but hopefully they'll do better in the next movies, the next trilogy or whatever they're working on, because you know Star Wars isn't going to die anytime soon. So we'll see. We'll see if they do better. We'll see, because they can't possibly do worse than Last Jedi. So, as a fan of Star Wars and with high hopes in the future, I can't wait to see what they come up with next.